William Locke of Gulfport was assigned to the battleship U.S.S. Pennsylvania in 1939. He remembers when they were sent to Hawaii for training at a place called Pearl Harbor.
We were really glad to get out to the West Coast and get aboard our ship. We'd been assigned to different ships. Mine was the U.S.S. Pennsylvania. It was a battleship. And we went into Long Beach, and it wasn't long. We got orders to go to Pearl Harbor for exercises. We were going to be out there 3 months. We had heard of Pearl Harbor, but we didn't know anything about it. We were going out there, we were going to conduct exercises, and we did. And we got out there. We had a chaplain on board. He was full commander, and he said, well, we're only going to be here 3 months. And so I want everybody in the crew to go around the island. So he arranged bus tours, you know, so many had to stay on the ship and some go every day. We're just going to be there for a limited time, and they wanted everybody to see. And he said, well, we'll get the hula girls. He had the hula girls came out, you know, on the ship, and that was, you know, it was nice too. But after that was over, everybody was asking, when are we going back to the States? Nobody knew. You know, it don't take long to go around the island. It was the island of Oahu. It don't take long to go around the island. And the pineapples, you see those, you know. Well, so all you had out there was a movie. You go to a movie, you had to line up downtown, you know, to go to a movie. And we rocked along till my enlistment expired in November 41. I couldn't be discharged because the order was you had to be in the continental limits of the United States before you could be discharged. We were at Pearl Harbor at 1010 docked. The Pennsylvania was the flagship. It carried the admiral of the fleet. And the 1010 dock was a choice dock because you went alongside and put the gang when you walked over to the Navy Yard on land. The other ships had to tie up and you had to ride a launch in. We had been out, I don't remember exactly, but I remember we had just come in the week of December the 6th. We hadn't been in but a few days and when the Japanese hit on the 7th.
Locke left his ship to watch a University of Hawaii football game on December 6, 1941. He recalls waking up the next morning as Japanese dive bombers began to attack the fleet at Pearl Harbor.
Saturday being a holiday, my friend and I went over to, we'd heard that there's a stateside football team. They're going to play the University of Hawaii, and we went over to that game. We wanted to see it. And after the game, he and I went downtown and made the rounds at Honolulu, and the joints, you know, the beer joints, and had drinks and all that. And then we went back to the ship. I guess we arrived back to the ship around midnight. That was on a Saturday night. But Sunday was a holiday. Being a holiday, we were able to sleep in. And around 7 o'clock, or a little before, I was awakened by an air alert alarm. Jumped out of bed. Just about the time my feet hit the deck, they sounded a general alarm. That meant all hands on station. I pulled on my trousers, and the porthole opened in the compartment where I was sleeping. And I was getting dressed. I looked out the porthole. The first thing I saw was a plane with a rising sun on that plane. I thought, this is for real. And the plane had been hit. A shell had penetrated him, and he was on fire. And I'll never forget this. I still remember it today. He had his hands up like this, and his mouth open like he was screaming. But he was engulfed with flames, and the plane went down over the IE and landed a short distance. And the torpedo bombers was coming down through the battleship row, dropping torpedoes, and they started exploding. It was something that I can't describe hardly.
During the battle, Locke looked on as the low-flying enemy planes relentlessly attacked anything that moved. He describes feeling helpless and relates how a shipmate's body saved him from an exploding bomb.
There wasn't too much we could do, really. We had machine guns, which were manned, and they were firing. But as far as our heavy batteries, we couldn't do much because the planes are so low. If you train your gun down, you'd be shooting into another ship. We were just like a bunch of ducks, you know, in a fish pond. What I was thinking was that they were going to kill everybody. Bombs exploding, Oil was on fire on the water. All of a sudden, a battleship rolled bottom side up, which we'd been told they were unsinkable. The Oklahoma bellied up. Arizona blew up. Just every ship had been hit. On Saturday afternoon, we had orders to go from 1010 dock into dry dock, which we did. And we were on blocks. When we got in dry dock, they drained it out. We were settled on blocks. We were high and dry. I guess we were the first ship that ever fought on dry land, battleship that ever fought on dry land. But anyway, now, second raid we were hit and got a 500-pound bomb. We had two destroyers in dry dock, the Cassins and the Downs. They were ahead of us on blocks. They were hit and they burned. And what the exec and the skipper was concerned about was the heat from these two destroyers ahead of us. I was trying to get the temperature of the magazines that held the powder in our forward part of the ship. We had bagged powder to shoot the big guns, and they were afraid that it was going to explode. The heat was going to explode that powder from these two burning destroyers. And the heat started rising, and the skipper ordered the dock flooded. The first lieutenant took a gang of people and went over the gangway to the dock to turn on the water. And as he went across, a Japanese machine gunner shot him and killed him as he was on the gangplank. The Japanese gunners, anybody that moved, planes were flying around and they were machine gunning the personnel if they was off the ship or where they could see them moving, they were machine gunning them, killed him. But they flooded the dock, and that helped put out the fire of the two destroyers, But the skipper and the exec secured all people on the bridge and said, go down, everybody go down and move mess benches in the casemates so that you can operate the broadside guns. We had some people ate in what they call the casemates where the guns were, and the broadside guns are there on each side of the ship. So I went down with some more boys, and one boy in particular named Watson. And went down the ladder and went across to the starboard side of the ship. He was in front of me, and we're going into the casemate from the passageway. As he stepped in the casemate through the hatch, I was immediately behind him. We got hit with a 500-pound bomb, and it went down to the main deck before it exploded and came up, and quick as it exploded as an inferno. And it was a roaring fire because the paint caught on fire. The shrapnel, when it came up, he was stepping in there, and the shrapnel got him in the chest and the body. In fact, the concussion knocked him backwards and knocked me back, and my head hit the steel deck. There was a baker in the passageway. There was a bake shop on the right. He was baking, and he came out and he saw that Watson's hair was burning. His hair was on fire, and he had shrapnel on, and you could see the blood coming through. He had on dungarees shirt, and you could see the blood. And he says, Locke, talking to me, let's take Watson down to the medical officer. So I told him, he told me this. He said, I will when I find my white hat. I was goofy, and I was looking for my white hat. That was important, I had a concussion. I could have gotten a Purple Heart, but I never have asked for it or anything. But I took him, he got between his legs, and I got under his armpit. We took him down the steps, and he said, take it easy as we went down the steps. We got down there, and the doctor examined him, and he shook his head. He said he's gone. But the boy really saved my life. He took the shrapnel.
After the attack on Pearl Harbor, Locke compiled damage and casualty reports for the Navy. He explains why his parents thought he was dead for 10 days and why his memories still haunt him today.
I just remember I went down to the office, and we started trying to get up a casualty report and all that. I had to make a casualty report. And one of my men, I couldn't find him. He was never found. He was in the vicinity. He was moving mess benches in the vicinity, and couldn't find. What disturbed me most in my mind and still bothers me was the people that had their legs blown off and their guts blown out and screaming, "Help me." That's what really in my mind today. I never forget that. Please help me. And there's nothing you could do. The Japanese are gone, and I was busy trying to get up and working on my, and of course, exec, he was helping. We were trying to find out what our damage was, and we found out that the damage to the ship was such that we could get underway as far as that goes. The Japanese knew the Pennsylvania was a flagship, and we found out they had a chart where all the ships were anchored. And of course, they had us tagged. We were supposed to get the first torpedo. When we moved into dry dock on Saturday afternoon, there's an old oiler had been fueling the ships around the harbor. They called it a yard craft. It's called the Ogallala, and she had moved in there temporarily overnight. It was late when she got her finished, and we was out away from our dock, so it was empty. So they just moved in there overnight. She got the first torpedo. It was determined, and the torpedo went through her. It was an old empty tanker, and it exploded into the dock. Exploded in the dock, and we had a shortwave radio. The Japanese started broadcasting loud and clear on shortwave. They said immediately that the Pennsylvania was hit and sunk with the admiral, and all hands went down. And it was 10 days before we were allowed off the ship to go downtown. They broadcast that the Pennsylvania was hit and went down with all hands, including the admiral. AP-UP picked that up and published it in the States. But my father and mother, of course, read the paper, and they believed him. They have a tendency to believe the Pennsylvania. They knew I was on the Pennsylvania. They thought I was dead, for 10 days. And they let us go over town and send Western Union wires, and I sent a wire. They were surprised.